Hello, hello. Hold on. No. I see Melissa. How you doing, Melissa?
Good. I like your background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the longer we do this, the more backgrounds I'm going to download.
I got it.
Say hi to Rabbi.
Hey, hello, hello. Look at that little thing. We're outside, we're having fun.
But see, I'm not going to be on there.
If you sit next to me, you will be.
No.
Maureen, just move
But
over.
mine should be, I should be able to get it in on mine too. I'm the only person that doesn't have it work.
Do you have that?
They sort that out. Ah, there's Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie.
That's old people. It takes us a while to catch on to this.
I'll tell you, it's not easy, honestly. I mean, I'm happy with myself how quickly I picked up on like the basics of it, but there's just more levels and more layers to it that I'm still learning.
Thank God I have the kids here to help me out.
Yeah, it's really something. And you know, I'm seeing all these posts now. People beginning to get Zoom fatigue, which I can understand. You know, because this modality, like, it's fine.
No, I got
what
him.
it is. It's just that it's not something that is meant to be used for a year of doing, you know, Bible studies and services.
Bonnie, did you get sound?
Yeah, and I see Stan. I don't see you.
I see them both.
Oh, okay.
But if we're close to each other, we're gonna get reverb from my voice.
Back in an hour.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yes, that's not gonna work so well.
okay. How many do we have?
We got 6.
Oh, there's Maureen.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Wait, Bonnie, do you only see one at a time?
Well, they opened up 2 windows. I think they have it on their phone and a computer, I think.
Oh.
And so that's why we're getting all that reverb when they're unmuted. Because they're on 2 machines.
Oh, there you are. Okay, am I there? I guess I am.
Yeah, you're there.
Okay, last week you didn't see me, so now
Yeah.
I'm there.
Now I see you. Yeah.
Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Melissa.
No, it's Debbie.
Oh, hi, Debbie.
Okay.
I'm having some wine.
Not a bad idea.
We had
Not a bad
margarita.
idea. You had margaritas? We had wine. I like margaritas.
Yeah, my kids live in here. They cook.
Hi, Marilyn.
No.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Marilyn.
Hi.
Oh, Marilyn, you look good. How's your toes?
You want me to show you those too?
Did you put the stickers on?
I did put them on.
I didn't yet.
One foot looks good.
Switching back from people.
What?
There's Linda's came in. Nice to see you, Linda.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hello, hello.
Where's Sandy? She's supposed to be there. Oh,
Real
Coming in right now.
there's Sandy.
Oh, I get to see my
Sandy.
Hey, Sandy.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Sandy.
Hello.
Oh, and there's Jan. All
Jan-
kinds of people.
Jan's struggling with the sound.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Linda. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
Hi, Jan. Hi, Melissa.
Ah,
Sandy.
But just when you get out of no, I'm in my Torah
Hey,
study.
you're like incognito in the way in the back.
Maureen, look at yourself. Hold
Hi,
the
Maureen.
thing. You have to hold this.
I only can get 4 people at a time. Can you get more than 4 people?
Yeah,
Expand your screen. You can get more than 4.
what do you
Yes.
want?
switching it.
There's a speaker view. If you look on top, you should see a speaker view or a gallery view. And so if you click on that, it'll give you more windows.
Well, I'm on a
Maureen,
phone. I'm not on a
sound
computer.
is off.
Then you're only going to get 4 if you're on your phone usually.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you might be able to switch it, but I'm not sure. If you keep scrolling to the
Yeah,
side,
I can see. Yeah, I can see 4 at a time.
What is your background?
Oh,
What the background?
Rabbi, what's your
You.
background?
Are you in a dollhouse? Rabbi,
no.
you look like you're in a dollhouse.
no, this is actually The Simpsons for a generational miss. But that's
It looks like The Simpsons.
yeah.
And Melissa, you're outside.
I'm outside. It's nice out.
You're outside.
Yes. So someone had a couple days ago, and I got a little virtual background envious.
Oh,
So I
that's
decided to do it too.
So cute.
It's a competition. That's the most
he
fun
had the
background. Okay. Okay. Well, it's great to see everybody. I really enjoy our times together. We get a chance to study a little bit, and we get to see each other and talk to each other a bit, which is also very nice as well. As a brief refresher on our past year, you know, that everyone's been with us for every sort of week of Torah study. We've been delving into the works of the prophets this year, and so we started off with the 3 major prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. These are the ones that have the biggest canon of works. You know, their books are very long, probably had more than one author to them, and they are really extensive and oft quoted and used in Haftarah, you know, our Shabbat Haftarah studies. Then we have the 12 minor prophets that come after it. Those who we've been studying in the past few weeks. We studied Joel, we studied Amos, and we're continuing our study this week with the most famous of the 12 minor prophets, in my opinion, because he's the one who we read every single year, from beginning to end usually, every single year. And that prophet is?
What is that?
Followed by a big fish.
Jonah.
Jonah, there we go.
Jonah.
Jonah.
We saw a big fish outside the port this
Yeah.
morning.
So Jonah is one of the 12 minor prophets, and we read his story every Yom Kippur afternoon. And so his work is actually more well known than most of the works of the minor prophets. And so, for example, if I asked you to tell me anything about Zephaniah, you know, like I don't think we'd have too many people who that even is, much less that he was a prophet and he has a book, as opposed to Jonah, which we all sort of know in brief, or maybe even more, the story of Jonah, right? We can sort of recap that story to ourselves. We've heard it so many times that Jonah is asked by God, or really told by God, to be fair, to go and to prophesy to the people of Nineveh. Jonah says, no, thank you, and goes the other way, goes to Tarshish, and throughout that process winds up getting swallowed by a big fish, often translated as a whale. It's not a whale, it's a big fish. He gets swallowed by a big fish. He prays in the belly of the fish. He gets
Ooh, what is that?
Yes.
That is a lot of noise. So he then goes to Nineveh, and he does as God commands. He preaches to the people of Nineveh, who are the Assyrians, I would mention. And in an amazing sort of coincidence, turnaround, irony, however you want to put it, he's actually successful. He's one of the few prophets who can actually claim a degree of success. The people of Nineveh repent and they turn from their evil ways, and then God spares the city. And Jonah doesn't care for it. Jonah was sort of waiting for these people to get wiped out. And then Jonah then goes, he rests under a plant, that God has created, this kikayon, this gourd. And then he's happy under the gourd. Then God makes the plant die. And then Jonah's distressed and really upset. And God says, well, how are you so upset about this plant? It sprang up, overnight. It died. But you don't care about all these people in Nineveh. And that's, how the story ends. Leaving the lingering question, which we'll discuss at the end of our time together today, is, does Jonah get it? Does Jonah have any sense of understanding about what has happened to him over the past, length of the story? Does he understand God? Does he understand forgiveness, redemption? Does he get it at all? Or is he just sort of befuddled? He's actually also the only prophet who's never called a prophet in his book. It never says God speaks to Jonah the prophet. God calls to Jonah and says, Jonah, go to Nineveh. So we don't even have that, in his book. He's never called a prophet. There's no oracles. There's no visions. Then it's just really 100% of a narrative. It's prose the entire way through. There's no, except for his prayer, there's no really poetic elements. It's just a third-person account. It's a story that is told. We don't have a sense of really anything about Jonah's life past what we have in the book, except if we opened up our Bibles, virtually in our minds. We can think about the Bible, of course, and think about the second book of Kings. We have Kings 14:25, and it says, it was he, referring to King Jeroboam II, who restored the territory of Israel from Lebo Hamath to the Sea of Arabah, in accordance to the promise of the Eternal, the God of Israel, and the promise he had made through his servant. And here we get the prophet Jonah, son of Amittai, from Gath Hefer, which is a coastal, not really coastal, sort of a border city in northern Israel. So that's our only mention of Jonah, aside from the book of Jonah, that he was a prophet. He gets one sentence, in the book of Second Kings, that he helped out with some kind of dispute between Israel and Syria, and that's all we get. This was around, late 8th century BCE, so we have a date for Jonah, in terms of when the person lived, or when the individual lived. We have a sense of that, but we don't have a sense really, in this book itself, the book of Jonah, when it was written. We have some idea that because of the stylistic, the use of the language, some allusions to other biblical books, it's probably a later prophetic book. I'm just gonna put a little bit of mute on. I feel like there's a lot of noise in certain places. I'm just gonna, just for a second, just give a little mute here. It'll be a little easier to hear. Okay. And so we have, with Jonah, a blending of elements of folklore, of fable, of satire, and allegory. I happen to like books in the Bible that I feel are multi-layered. It's fortunate that a lot of them are multi-layered. And Jonah has a lot, I think, going for it in that realm, that much like, if we remember our conversation on Megillat Esther, the scroll of Esther, that the author in Esther makes it pretty clear that the book is taken, should be taken as a satire, as taken as a work of fiction and of humor. In Jonah as well, there's a lot of humor in the book, lots of exaggerations. The idea of a person believing they can run away, from God. The whole thing with the fish and being inside the fish's belly and praying. His extreme reaction to a plant dying. And even the idea that the animals in Nineveh are actually wearing sackcloth and ashes because the animals are repenting for their sins. So I think, again, it's meant to be an exaggerated text, meant to teach a lesson. What lesson is that, you might ask? Repentance and deliverance seems to be the major theme in the book of Jonah, that we can ask for forgiveness and we can be confident and assured that if we do the right thing, of the breadth of God's compassion, of the depth, of God's compassion and forgiveness. This text actually crops up. It's alluded to not once, but twice in the New Testament as well, that the Gospel of Matthew speaks about Jonah, and the Gospel of Luke speaks about Jonah. Now, that's actually not, saying much in terms of both of the Gospels, because they were both probably written from another source. There was probably a Gospel that predated both of them that is not Mark, that both of those Gospels drew from. So it's not surprising to see that a similar story appears in both Gospels. But Matthew says, then some of the Pharisees, that would be us, and teachers of the law said to him, meaning Jesus, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. He answered, a wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The man of Nineveh will stand up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and now something greater than Jonah is here. So the idea being that just as Jonah was gone for 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, Jesus post-crucifixion was gone for 3 days and 3 nights until the resurrection, according to Christian theology. And so he's saying that that's going to be the sign, the same kind of idea, and that the people of Nineveh, who were notoriously wicked people of Nineveh, they got the message and they repented. But this generation, the one that he's living in, he says people are not going to repent in the same way. And that story is again repeated, pretty similarly in the Gospel of Luke. So with all of that said, we're going to now dive in to the text itself. I'm going to share my screen and we'll say the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise God, the eternal one of blessing, ruler of creation of all the world, who has given us the commandment, blessed us and sanctified us with the commandment of engaging with words of Torah. And now we will have our friend Jonah come on up. Okay, I was playing with the setting yesterday, so let's see if that's better or not. Okay, so we have this, our Jonah text. Melissa, you want to give us a read? You or Tyler?
Sure.
Sure, I'll do it. The word of the Eternal came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go at once to Nineveh, the great city, and proclaim upon it, for their wickedness has come before me. Jonah, however, started out to flee to Tarshish from the eternal service. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. He paid for the fare and went aboard to sail with the others to Tarshish, away from the service of the eternal.
Okay, we can pause right there. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I just love this book. It gets right to the point. There's no dilly-dallying. There's no messing around. The first thing that happens, God says to Jonah, go to Nineveh. And Jonah goes, nope. Like Jonah is really adamant about not going. He doesn't argue with God. He just completely ignores God and decides that he's going to do something different. And again, that map of the Middle East, that in order to get to Nineveh, you'd have to go in one direction, and in order to go to Tarshish, you have to go into the other direction. And so he's really going the exact opposite. He is running away. He's going towards Spain. Like that's where he's trying to head, get to at this point. So he really doesn't want to do it. Not, by the way, uncommon. What's uncommon is the extreme lengths that he takes. But as we remember in our prophetic studies, that there's more than one prophet, including Moses, that wasn't so keen on being a prophet, that sort of came up with arguments against and sort of concerns, raised up some worries about why this wasn't a great idea. And one thing we know from the Bible, God doesn't take no for an answer very well. So the God has made up his mind, says, Jonah, you're the guy. You're going to go and you're going to prophesy to the Ninevites, Ninevians, whatever however we want to call them. Going back to our biblical history, we just have to remember again who the people of Nineveh were. Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrians, the Assyrian Empire, that who in the 700s, 722, wind up coming in and destroying the northern kingdom of Israel. So Jonah, again, in this story, is not going to be a fan, right? He's not going to be a fan of the Ninevites. So his idea of he'd probably think to himself, good, go kill these people. I hate these people. It's fine. You want to go destroy them. Why does it matter to me? Why should I go and save them, right? Because these people have been nothing but trouble for us. It doesn't matter, and so Jonah might even be confused and maybe even affronted by the idea of having to try to save these people who he believes are Israel's enemies. We're going to continue. Bonnie, you want to give a read? We're at but the eternal cast.
But the eternal cast a mighty wind upon the sea, and such a great tempest came upon the sea that the ship was in danger of breaking up. In their fright, the sailors cried out, each to his own god, and they flung the ship's cargo overboard to make it lighter for them. Jonah, meanwhile, had gone down into the hold of the vessel, where he lay down and fell asleep. The captain went over to him and cried out, how can you be sleeping so soundly? Up, call upon your God. Perhaps the God will be kind to us and we will not perish.
Which I love this idea. Again, the visual is pretty spectacular. So, Jonah goes, he buys a ticket, one-way ticket to Tarshish. Here's my, a few bucks, whatever it is. He's going to get on the ship. Then the world starts to end, around him. Waves are crashing onto the boat. There's a huge tempest. You have to imagine the tumult, that would be happening on the boat at this point. People are screaming, they're trying to get everything sorted so the whole boat doesn't explode, right, and sink into the water. And Jonah's taking a snooze. He's taking a little schluff down in the compartment, and he's sound asleep. How can you sleep through this? Get up. And he's chill. He's fine. It's really something. He's just not worried about it. It doesn't explain why he's not worried. Maybe he's just a really good sleeper, but he just fell asleep. And the captain's like, what are you doing? We're all going to die. Maybe you might want to help us out here a little bit because the ship's going down. And so that's when Jonah has to, talk to them about, well, why is this happening? What's going on? Does anyone have a question so far?
Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah.
In the beginning, which is in the beginning, I just thought of this after 70 or 80 years of listening to this story, that you said we know nothing about Jonah.
Mm-hmm.
We know nothing if he's a prophet. We don't know any background. We don't know if he believes in God. So when some voice comes and tells him to go to Nineveh, which is the Assyrian enemy, he said, I'm going to drop this guy and get out of here. And I'm going to hide because I don't know who this guy is. What does he want me to do?
Yeah, we have no idea from the book of Jonah, itself, what his background was. Because we have an idea that, let's say, Ezekiel, that we have a sense of sort of who he was, who his family was, and the fact that he was more of a cultic prophet, that he was involved in the priestly service. So we have some sense of sort of where he's coming from. And even someone like Amos, like we don't know a ton about his background past that he was a shepherd, right? He was a shepherd from Tekoa, and he gets the call to go and he becomes a prophet. Jonah, we don't know what he's doing on a normal day, right? He could be doing anything and anything. We don't know idea what he's doing. But we have this idea that when God calls you, sort of makes you a prophet, like God makes the prophet. God's the one who says, hey, you buddy, time to go get to work. We have no idea what his background was at all. We have no idea what his beliefs were. We don't have anything, of it other than throughout the story, we get a little bit of his theology, as he prays, things like this. But from the onset, just a dude, just a guy that is getting tapped to do this. And the way I look at it and when I see it is that I think the first thing he thinks is why? Like, why me? You know, there might be other people who are better at this. There might be people who have more experience. Why am I getting the call to do this? You know, as opposed to anyone else. So I think there's you know, sort of issue of self-confidence. Maybe he is a prophet, right? And he thinks, well, maybe there are better prophets than I am that are out there that can do this. Or if you want me to prophesy, I'll prophesy, but I'm going to prophesy to Judea. I'm going to prophesy to, you know, my people that I care about. Why am I going to care about other people? So yeah, there's a lot of questions, which I think is, again, makes this book so layered of what's Jonah's ideas in this first moment of, hey, Jonah, God calling, time to pack your bags, time to go. But now, you know, I'm comfortable. I'm watching Netflix. You know, like, I don't want to go out to, you know, prophesy. I got a roast in the oven, and I'm doing okay. Now I'm going to shove to Nineveh, or I might get killed. That's the other part of it too, by the way, is that there is a reasonable fear, one would think, from Jonah's perspective, that a Israelite prophet might not last so long in the city of Nineveh. You know, it might not be the best idea for him to be yelling, hey, you're all going to die. God's going to get you, you know, in very hostile waters. It was hard enough for a prophet like Jeremiah, who was beaten and thrown in jail by, you know, the Judean people, much less having to preach to like Babylonia or something. It wouldn't work out so well. There's a lot there.
I think also it says that each of the sailors to their own gods. So there's a concept that everybody has some kind of a god, whether it's pagan or otherwise, and they assume that Jonah has one too.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's also the, you know, no atheists in foxholes kind of idea. You know, that, you know, bad stuff's happening. I think there's an assumption everyone's got a God to pray to. Time to get to praying, you know, time to have somebody, you know, pray. And maybe, again, maybe your God will be a better listener than my God at this moment. So it's not only that they assume a belief in God, but I think that the polytheism of the time is on display, where they all assume that there are many gods at this point, and that, you know, you can call up, you know, Ra, you can call up Baal, you can call up, you know, Adonai, you can call any god that you want, and maybe one of the guys picks up the phone, you know, it's call waiting for the other ones. It's a busy signal. And maybe if you pray to your God, you're going to get through. You have the direct line to God. But yeah, it's an assumption that we all believe in God, or a God. Let's keep going. And Jan, you want to pick that up actually from there? The men said to one another.
The men said to one another, let us cast lots and find out on whose account this misfortune has come upon us. They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. They said to him, tell us, you have brought this misfortune upon us. What is your business? Where have you come from? What is your country? And what of your people are you? I am Hebrew, he replied. I worship the eternal, the God of heaven, who made both sea and land. The men were greatly terrified and asked him, what have you done? When the men learned that he was fleeing from the service of the eternal, or so he told them, they said to him, what must we do to make the sea calm around us, for the sea growing more and more stormy?
Okay, we can pause right there. We can pause. That's good. So they start out with this idea of let's draw straws and see whose fault this is. So they have this little game of chance, and they try to figure out who's the problem child here. And the problem child, of course, is Jonah. You know, it's all his fault for whatever he was doing wrong. And so Jonah goes, you know, he gives him the whole sob story here, so lets him know what the problem was. And the people are just, they're fascinated, I think, and terrified by this story. That, what do you mean you disobeyed your God? That's not a smart idea. My God tells me to do something, I would do it. Why are you disobeying God for? Even if they don't believe, as a note, in that God, I think they are all understanding enough to that when God speaks to you, you do what your God tells you to do. You know, you don't go and do something different. So they're sort of terrified. They're all freaked out about it. And they can see all around them, stuff ain't getting better. You know, there's the wind, there's the rain, you know, there's waves crashing against the hull of the boat. People are flying around everywhere. There's, you know, cargo going overboard maybe. It's a whole ordeal. And they're trying to sort this out the best that they can. And they need sort of an answer. You know, how can we make this better at this point? Okay, Debbie.
You know what? Say that for my first comment, and now it says,
Yeah.
Jonah says, I worship the eternal God of heaven who made both sea and land. So he identified himself. At this point, we didn't know that in the first few paragraphs.
Yeah, we get a little bit more, as I mentioned, of his
Yeah,
theology.
I did it wrong. I didn't read all the instructions.
And so,
I wound up, I looked.
okay, so we are going to continue. Debbie, you want to pick up from there?
Can you put the marker where you want me to start?
Yeah, right here. He answered.
Okay, thank you. He answered, heave me overboard and the sea will calm down for you. For I know that this terrible storm came upon you on my account. Nevertheless, wait a minute.
Sorry,
Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to regain the shore, but they could not, for the sea was growing more and more stormy about them. Then they cried out to the Eternal, "Oh, please, Eternal, do not let us perish on account of this man's life. Do not hold us guilty of killing an innocent person. For you, O Eternal, by your will have brought this about." And they heaved Jonah overboard, and the sea stopped raging. The men feared the Eternal greatly. They offered a sacrifice to the Eternal, and they made vows.
This is a very sometimes overlooked part of the story. We'll break this down in layers. So first, you know, Jonah says, you know what, just toss me. Just throw me overboard. I'm done here anyway. I don't want to obey God's command. This whole thing's gonna blow up if I don't get if we don't remedy the situation. God's angry at me, not you. Just toss me overboard. It'll be fine. They all think to themselves, you got to be out of your mind. You know, we're not throwing you overboard. What a terrible idea this is. You know, just say sorry, do something else, right? But we're not throwing you overboard. And so they work really hard to row, right, to regain the shore, which, by the way, very admirable. You know, like, you know, they don't really owe Jonah much, right? But they're going to say, look, you know, we don't want you to die, so we're going to try to get back to shore on our own. Didn't work out so well. And then after that, they actually pray. You know, that they pray to God. They pray to Jonah's God, so to speak, and really ask for forgiveness. They ask to not be, you know, held responsible or accountable for Jonah and for Jonah dying, because they know that throwing him overboard here, he's not going to live. So they want to make sure that they're covered. They have a little prayer here. I think genuine, as we'll see in a moment by what happens next. They heave Jonah overboard. Hopefully Jonah had some swim lessons, but they toss him overboard, and the sea calms down. The sea stops raging. And so in this moment, right in time, we talk about the idea about how do you know a prophet is a prophet? When their stuff comes true. You know, if the stuff doesn't come true, they're not a prophet. They're a whack job. You know, so it's like, you know, that they're not well, right? So they're cuckoo. So Jonah is a prophet, right? He says, throw me overboard, the sea will stop raging. Gets thrown overboard, sea stops raging. Hey, you know, so he proves on one account his own prophetic powers, and on the other hand, and more importantly, he shows that his God has power, right? That his God has the ability to stop the sea from raging. And so through this act of crazy self-sacrifice, he actually winds up creating converts, you know, in the reading of this, that they all of a sudden they fear / revere God, and they're offering, I don't know where they got a sacrifice on the boat, but you know, maybe they had something to sacrifice. They made some kind of offering, and they made vows with the extension of this being, they made vows to, you know, worship God. So Jonah, in this moment of prophecy, before he even gets to Nineveh, winds up creating converts. He winds up, creating more Israelites, so to speak, which I think is a fascinating part of the story that's often overlooked. That again, through this act of sacrifice, he creates, people who are worshiping God. Very interesting, I think.
Could they, excuse me, could they have thrown him over? I know he volunteered to jump off, but do you think that after he revealed that he was a Hebrew, that the other sailors were not, and his life was not of value because he was a Hebrew?
No, because I think that after they learn that, they're trying to get back to the shore. They could save his life, and then they're praying, about him as well. I think this was one of the needs of the many are greater than the needs of the few or the one. We had Star Wars Day yesterday, but we can have a little Star Trek today, and with the idea that he's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good, and they are willing, but not after fighting hard to not do it. But they said, what choice do we have? We're going to try to, do it his way. Though they really don't want to, I think. I think that, in fact, again, the text tells us that they don't want to do it. They have no interest in doing it because they don't want to kill an innocent person and they don't want to be held guilty for it.
Do you think that this was a test, like starting with Abraham, that Jonah is really going to test God and see if he's going to save them, do what he says? And then it happened. So he becomes a believer.
I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I haven't read it that way. I read it more like, I don't want to go to Nineveh. I'm gonna die anyway. You might as well just kill me here on the boat. Just throw me overboard. I'm not going to Nineveh. Just throw me overboard, and whatever happens is gonna happen. I think the most noble way of looking at it is that Jonah was trying to look out for the other sailors, the people on the boat with him. I think that's probably the most noble reading for it. I don't think it's about his belief that God's going to help him. I think it's more that he believes that he can save the other people and sacrifice himself. I think that would be the reading that I would like to give it, for Jonah. One can also just say that he's given up. He's, washing his hands in this whole thing, not in a good way. It's always good to wash your hands, but he's washing his hands in the whole situation and saying, forget it. I'm just, I'm going to end this right now. And so if I'm dead, I can't go to Nineveh. It can almost be a challenge to God. Hey, I'm going to get the last shot of you. You want me to go to Nineveh? Look what I'm going to do now. Jump off the side of the boat. Of course, God does not let Jonah off the proverbial hook so easily. A little more fish humor for us all. Okay. Chapter 2. Marilyn, you want to give us a read over here?
Sure. The Eternal provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah remained in the fish's belly 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah prayed to the Eternal God from the belly of the fish. He said, in my trouble I called to the Eternal, and God answered me. From the belly of Sheol I cried out, and you heard my voice. You cast me into the depths, into the heart of the sea. The floods engulfed me. All your breakers and billows swept over me. I thought I was driven away out of your sight, but I ever gaze again upon your holy temple. The waters closed in over me. The deep engulfed me. Weeds twined around my head. I sank to the base of the mountains. The bars of the earth closed upon me forever. Yet you brought my life up from the pit, O Eternal, my God. When my life was ebbing away, I called the Eternal to mind, and my prayers came before you, into your holy temple. They who cling to empty folly forsake their own welfare, but I, with loud thanksgiving, will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed, I will.
Sorry, hold on. I was just trying to get the feedback from stopping. Go ahead.
I will perform. Deliverance is the Eternal's. The Eternal commanded the fish, and it spewed Jonah out upon dry land.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, this prayer is so, to me, fascinating. It really is. I'm unmuting people now. That we don't have a ton in the Bible of prayers of this magnitude. This is a really big prayer. Like Jonah's not messing around here when it comes to his prayer. He is, I think, again, my reading of it, we can disagree. I think it's very heartfelt. I think it's emotional. I think it's spiritual. I think that he's really, I think he's tormented is too strong of a word, but he's really sort of, he's feeling very deep, very sincere emotions, in this moment. And, out of this literal pit, in a way, because he's in the stomach, of this animal, he's calling out to God and praying from a place of fear and trepidation, but also in his way saying that he's sorry, so asking for forgiveness. So it begins, in my trouble, I call out to the eternal, and then God answered. Okay, and then you see this dual is this what's it called? I don't remember the technical term, but it repeats twice. So right, in my trouble, I called out to the eternal, and God answered me as one. Then he says the same thing a second time. From the belly of Sheol, I cried out, and you heard my voice. So saying the same things in two different ways. It's supposed to be poetic that way. And Sheol, we know Sheol from the Bible, that it's a place of darkness. When you die, you said you go to Sheol, but there's not much after that. It's not really meant to be a heaven or a hell. It's just you sort of go into the nothingness, into the void. So it's like from the deepest, darkest, whatever, I cried out. And I think the beauty of this prayer in this moment is that it can be taken both ways, literally and metaphorically. Literally, yeah, he's like in the belly of the beast, so to speak. He's literally in that deep, dark place. So sure, like that's like a Sheol. And I think it's also obviously metaphorical, more emotional, spiritual, that in my distress, right, in my own personal darkness, I'm calling out to you now, God, that I am into the flood waters. The Psalms have more than one psalm. The book of Psalms, I'm saying, has more than one poem that uses very similar imagery. Out of the depths, I call to you. The flood waters have reached my neck, etc., etc. God, you have to rescue me from the deep, dark, damp mire that I am stuck in. And so it's very similar language, similar ideas. And it's again, working on both levels, because literally, all the waters were hitting him, but now you think about it from that metaphorical idea of just everything's coming at him at once. He's feeling overwhelmed, he's feeling engulfed, he's feeling surrounded by all of this that's happening to him. It's all, and he has no control over his situation. It's an admission, I think, of his lack of control of his own destiny at this moment, that God is the one pulling the strings here. God is the one in control. And, would he ever come back? Would he ever be able to go back to the temple? I mentioned, before, we don't have a sense from the beginning of his theology, but right now we do, right? So the temple's obviously important to him, and I think it shows that he's prayed before. I'll put it that way. That this is a very heartfelt prayer. One idea he has done this before. And so he's thinking, it's like all the walls are closing in on him and there's no escape. But at the very last moment, God brings him up from the pit, and God saved him, and God's going to bring him back to the temple. And he's grateful, for that. And he affirms that in the end, deliverance belongs to God, right? That God has the power to save. And I think that's a tacit admission from Jonah. Hey, I'm wrong. You want to save these people? It's up to you. It's not up to me. I, Jonah, have judged these people guilty already. I don't like them. I don't want to deal with them. But that's not my call. That's your call. God, you get to make the decision here. And now I'm going to go do my job like I'm supposed to in the beginning. I'm not going to run anymore. I'm going to go to Nineveh. I'm going to do my job. And God willing, do it well. And the chips are going to fall where they may. Very powerful stuff, I think. Anyone have a thought on this?
Do you think that the description of what happened to Jonah is a example of what God has to do to make Jonah believe and do what God says?
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about Moses, right, in his story is that his encounter with God happens in a very subdued way. That there are people who would walk along, the wilderness, and they would see a bush on fire, and they'd keep on walking because what's the big deal about a bush on fire? And Moses has the insight, the spirituality, the curiosity, whatever you might want to say, but something in him stops, and he has to go to examine the bush, and of course it's the burning bush, and it's the presence of God. It's easy to ignore, easy to miss a burning bush. Being swallowed by a whale or a big fish, of course, it's hard to sort of doubt what's happening at that point. If you're alive still in the belly of this thing, hard to deny God's power and God's might and God's miracles here. And so I think that Jonah in this whale is like, you know what? You win, God. I'm not fighting anymore. Maybe it affirms his belief, affirms what he's supposed to be doing. You can't deny it anymore. That game is over. The ship again has sailed. He can't bring it back. It's time for him to go do his job now. There's no denying it anymore. There's no point. And I think I think that it can also be viewed that if God can save him in the belly of the big fish, then maybe God can save him, or not maybe, but indeed God can save him in Nineveh if he was going to get into a pickle, he was going to get into a jam.
Also, I think leaving the fish is sort of a rebirth. So he rebirthed to believe in God.
Yeah, sort of like another mikvah in a way. Yeah.
Rabbi, it's
Yeah.
Sandy.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the fact that Jonah, when he knew that the boat was in trouble, that the way he was going to save the other people on the boat was for him to go overboard or to jump in to calm the seas. Do you think what do you think was his intent? Was intent clearly just at that moment in time to save the other people, which is an act of goodness, of bravery or goodness to save other people? What do you think his intent was originally? And did he do that with some faith that God would save him, or was it strictly that he felt that was the right thing to do at the time?
Yeah, I think the most charitable reading of it is that he wants to save the other people, which I think is there. He wants to save the other sailors. Part of me wonders if he was suicidal. Part of me wonders if he was just thinking to himself, you know what? I don't want to go to Nineveh. God's forcing me into a position I don't want to be in. I'll show God, I'm not doing this. I tried it one way, going to Tarshish. That didn't work. I'm going to take a more drastic step and get heaved overboard. Let's see what God's going to do for me there. I don't want to do this that badly. Jonah, as we're going to see towards the end of the narrative, does not strike me as the most emotionally stable kind of guy. He seems to have some serious issues. And so it would not surprise me if it was more, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Checkmate. He's just really trying to get out of it.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
The falling asleep when everything was going on. I mean, maybe he was really depressed. He just fell asleep.
He took his Ambien. He took whatever it is. He's taking a snooze. It's a long trip to Tarshish. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah, he could have been. Yeah, he just could have been mopey and depressed and just went to sleep. There's certainly that reading as well. Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
for some reason, just for me personally, as I'm reading this, where it's talking about the waters closed in over me, weeds twined around my head, this is so descriptive. I feel like this brings me more into the story, makes it more personal to me than a lot of the other things we read.
Well, I think narrative and storytelling do that more. That's why I think this book is so popular, honestly, among the prophetic books, is that it's a story. We can sort of engage in it. It has a definite beginning, middle, and end. There's that human element to it because it's not a bunch of oracles or visions. It's about a person. It's about Jonah. And that's why, this prayer in particular, I love as a prayer because I think it can speak to us emotionally. It can speak to us pastorally, in a way, because I would dare say that we've all had moments and we've sort of felt like Jonah and sort of felt overwhelmed, sort of felt the walls were closing in, sort of like there was no escape. It's a time of prayer, and it's a time of, when you have nowhere else to turn, people turn to God. And he's in a situation where he's got nowhere else to turn. He is literally, this is life or death right now, and he's going to pray, and he's going to pour out his heart, to God in this moment. And I just think it's relatable because I think that we've, again, not to speak for anyone else, but I'm just saying that there are moments when what's left, of prayer, that need to sort of speak and sort of hand it over to a higher power, try to connect in some way, something greater than ourselves, when we ourselves cannot fix it, when we ourselves are out of control or helpless, that this is the time, to try to connect to something higher, something greater for help. And so to me, it's very humanizing for Jonah, and it's a change. I think it's a transformation, right? It's a transformation moment where he realizes who he is and what he's supposed to do, and how he's supposed to act in the world. Again, the character of Jonah, I think, is so fascinating because somebody who has no interest in doing his job winds up being really, really good at his job. Winds up being a really good prophet, even though he doesn't want it at all. It's like a master chef who doesn't want to cook. A master painter doesn't want to paint. Maybe Jonah is one of the greatest prophets, right? But he doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't want to do it. Doesn't have any interest in it.
Rabbi, but would God have known this? Would God have known this was going to be Jonah's story?
Yeah,
ahead of time, God. So he took. Would you say it was kind of he picked Jonah out when you were talking about earlier when you started reading early? To me, I heard some of the messages that any
we'll figure it out.
Everyone can be picked by God or could be considered a prophet. Even though they're this possibly the unlikely ones.
Yeah.
So God does that, and would he know that that's what Jonah would do? Or does he
I'm thinking about how much to give away here because actually, I'm thinking about this for high holidays for one of my sermons already. But because I love this story. I wonder. We talked about sort of before about the idea of was Jonah testing God, was being thrown out over the side of the boat. I think the test is in the beginning. I think God tests Jonah. I think God gives him this mission that is going to be hard, right? Mm-hmm. It's not an easy mission. It's tough. He's got to take a boat to a foreign land and prophesy to enemies to do it. If you have a hard job to do, you're not giving it to any Joe Schmo, right? If there's hard work to be done, you want an expert, right? You want someone who's experienced. You want someone who knows what they're doing. You don't pick the sheep herder, from Tekoa, like Amos. You don't pick somebody just off the street. Maybe Jonah's actually a really powerful and really great prophet. And God tests him and says, look, you're a great prophet. Now you got to do the hardest job imaginable. You got to go prophesy to people who you don't like. and they don't like you, and you got to go and you got to save them against your better judgment. If it was up to you, they would die, and you wouldn't worry about it at all. You would lose a wink of sleep, about it. Maybe that's the test. Maybe Jonah is so great and so powerful that God says, only you, Jonah, can handle this job. And Jonah is scared. Jonah is scared out of his mind of doing this. Not only, but he's not afraid, about his failure. He's afraid of his success. I don't think he wants to succeed. I think he knows he can do it because he's that darn good of a prophet. I think he knows that he can save the Ninevites, but he has no interest in doing so. I think he is afraid of his own power. I think he's afraid of the responsibility that comes with greatness. And so if you hear this on Kol Nidre, keep it to yourself. Because this might be the Kol Nidre sermon, is the idea that I think genuinely for a lot of people, we're not afraid of failure. We're afraid of the responsibility that comes with success. We're afraid of our own greatness, how good we can be, so we don't try. And we are content with status quo and mediocrity and living lives of quiet desperation, as opposed to ascending to the highest, and really fighting to be the idealized version of ourselves that we dream about, but are so fearful of trying to achieve that vision. But not because we think we can't do it, but because we're afraid of what's going to happen if we get there. And so that's our friend Abraham Maslow and the Jonah complex, for those of us who enjoy psychology. So we can study up on the Jonah complex. Once again, you might be hearing it in September. We'll see. But yeah, so that's where I think the challenge might lie, in the very beginning. Okay. We're up to chapter 3. We're going to try again. It's like a reboot at this point, where Jonah is going to get called again to do this. Stanley or Maureen, you want to give us a read over here?
Sure, go ahead.
The word of the Eternal came to Jonah a second time. Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it what I tell you. Jonah went at once to Nineveh, accordance with the Eternal's command. Nineveh was an enormously large city, a 3-day walk across. Jonah started out and made his way into the city, the distance of 1 day's walk, and proclaimed, 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. The people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast, and great and small alike put on sackcloth. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his robe, put on sackcloth, and sat in ashes. And he had the word cry through Nineveh, by decree of the king and his nobles, no man or beast or flock or herd shall taste anything. They shall not graze, and they shall not drink water. They shall be covered with sackcloth, man and beast, and shall cry mightily to God. Let everyone turn back from his evil ways and from injustice of which he is guilty. Who knows but that God may turn and relent. He may turn back from his wrath so that we do not perish. God saw what they did, how they were turned back. Where is it?
From their evil ways.
Oh, from their evil ways. And God renounced the punishment God had planned to bring upon them and did not carry it out.
So it works. I mean, again, like that's the amazing part. It works. It takes him a day. He gets there. He prophesies. After schlepping to a third of the city, the news spreads like wildfire. Everybody gets the message, including the king of Nineveh, who then puts on sackcloth and ashes, and everyone repents. The animals have sackcloth and ashes. Everyone's fasting. It's this huge transformation, and everyone says they're sorry. Everyone repents, and God says, "Okay, cool, thanks." Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Micah, they're all trying to do the same exact thing with the Israelites, with the Judeans, and they get nowhere. FS, strike out, nothing. No one listens to these people. Jonah goes to the Ninevites, everyone's all ears. And everyone repents, everyone does teshuvah, and they all get spared from this divine punishment. It really is, again, fascinating, I think, that here's this guy who doesn't want the job to begin with, and he goes out and he does a great job. A+ effort from Jonah. And now we're going to finish up quick because I see we're running out of time here on our session. But that being said, now we got another minute or two, I think. Okay, Sandy, you want to give us a read over here?
Sure. This displeased Jonah greatly, and he was grieved. He prayed to the Eternal, saying, "O Eternal, isn't this just what I said when I was still in my own country? That is why I fled beforehand to Tarshish. For I know that you are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, renouncing punishment. Please, Eternal, take my life, for I would rather die than live." The Eternal replied, "Are you that deeply grieved?"
It's amazing because, again, so Jonah's sort of retrofitting this whole thing, and because he didn't say anything right in the beginning of our story. We don't get an argument from Jonah as to why he doesn't want to go. He's like, this is why I didn't want to go in the first place, because I knew you wouldn't do it. I knew you wouldn't destroy Nineveh. So why should I have made this whole trip? And he sort of throws it back at God, using the Exodus quote, right? That you are a compassionate and gracious God. El Rachum v'Chanun, Erech Apayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet. You are a God who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness. That's who you are. That is your essence. Jonah is a prophet. He knows God's essence, the sine qua non of God, right? As a God of kindness and mercy and judgment and forgiveness, not judgment, forgiveness, renouncing judgment. That's what God is. That's God's essence. That's God's being. And so he's upset. He's so upset that he made this trip. That's it. I want to end it all now. Take my life. I don't want to see this anyway, which it comes out of left field. So I mentioned before with the throwing himself off the boat or getting heaved off the boat, that maybe he was a little bit suicidal, because even here at the end, he's like, I just want to die. I've had enough of this whole thing. And I'm not sure why. I've read this story 1,000 times, quite literally probably, and I'm not sure why. He's just that upset over what's happening here that he wants to end it all. Other than I think that it's just too much for him. This knowledge, this power he has is just too much for Jonah to handle. He doesn't want the responsibility, doesn't want the power that he has, either been granted or developed, probably both. He doesn't want it at this point. It's too much. But that's just one theory here. Other that, or he's just clinically depressed, which is also a possibility as well.
More like depressed.
Yeah, I think he's pretty depressed.
This is the second time that he wants to die by jumping in the water, and now this.
Yeah, he's sort of done. That's to be sure. And then we get to the end of the story here. Jonah left the city and found a place east of the city. He made a booth there and sat under it in the shade until he should see everything that happened to the city. He wanted to make sure everything was happening. Then God provides. This is a very interesting Hebrew noun, kikayon. It's really unclear what it is. Gourd is a common translation. There's a plant. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It begins with an R. I think it's ringus, something like that. I can't remember the name, but it's a castor oil, so the castor bean plant. That might be it as well. But frankly, gourd is easier to say. I think easier to envision, so I like gourd better. So God gives him a gourd, which grows up over Jonah, and gives him some shade, save him from this discomfort. And Jonah's thrilled. He doesn't like a nice, comfy, shady place to sit. And then the next day, of course, God's messing with him. God provides a worm, attacks the gourd and kills it. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, the sun rises and God provides a sultry east wind. And the sun beats down on Jonah's poor head. And then Jonah says, I'd rather die than live. He begged for him. And then God says to Jonah, are you so deeply grieved about the plant? Yes, so deeply that I want to die again. Jonah's got some issues here. God says, wait a minute, you cared about this plant, which you didn't work for, didn't grow, and appeared overnight and died overnight. So you're so upset about that. And what, me, God, I shouldn't care about Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who don't even know their right hand from their left hand, and many beasts as well. So, and that's where it ends. Like that's the stopping point for this story. And so to me, it is unclear at best whether or not at the end of this story, Jonah has any kind of aha moment where Jonah at the end of this goes, oh God, you're right. I didn't think of it that way. You've convinced me. I'm not clear that's the reading of it, whether he gets it or not at the end. I mean, how do people read it? Do we think Jonah gets it in the end, or do we think that Jonah's still sort of a schmo when it ends?
Wow, I don't know.
Don't know.
I think he needs help.
I do too.
I got to tell you, a lot of these biblical figures aren't exactly the model of consistency and emotional regulation. We have a lot of high-strung, high-spirited biblical figures. That's what makes them fun.
In the way, sort of I was thinking of the Garden of Eden, Adam, Eve, and the serpent and the apple. And at the end of it, it's like we were all very happy if everybody, Nazis in Germany, all get killed.
Mm-hmm. How does that relate to the Garden of Eden? I said there's that connection.
I don't get what he's saying.
Jan, I didn't get that connection to the Garden of Eden.
He tempted them with the serpent and the apple, and he tempted them with the gourd, etc. And a bad result came out of it. But on the other hand, it sounded like everybody was happy when all the Nazis were wishing all of them dead.
Yeah, I'm saying I don't see the connection between those two things.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, so I feel like, for Jonah, it's certainly that idea that he maybe does feel vengeful, right? That he does feel, again, sort of he doesn't want these people to live. I think that can be part of it. But I don't know. There's this thing about him and his mission and a discontent, right, with his responsibility and his power, that he just sort of feels, for whatever reason, that his power needs to be reserved, perhaps for those who deserve it. And he does not believe by any stretch of the imagination that the Ninevites are worthy of saving, which is not a nice thought, for Jonah, right? I mean, that's, I think, certainly an issue there, that he feels, again, a kind of vindictiveness. But again, one can understand, and maybe that's what we started speaking about, is that if people have done terrible things, you don't necessarily want to jump to it to save them. But we remember the story we just had during Passover, right? That the angels are dancing in heaven as the Egyptians are drowning, and then God says, "No, don't do that, because they're my children too. That my children, the Egyptians, are drowning. You can't celebrate their death. It's not the right thing to do, and that's why we pour out those 10 drops of wine during the Seder to in memory of the Egyptians who drowned at the sea and sort of their suffering. And so Judaism does not, though certainly there's a quote or two that one can say would prove otherwise, but traditionally do not sort of rejoice at the death and downfall of others.
I just wanted to ask, I see a new name, Elise, on our window or our pictures. Is there an Elise with us?
Yes.
Elise Cohen? Is it Elise Cohen?
Muted.
Oh, okay. Hi. I'm Sandy. I've met you at Temple. I saw your name. I noticed it was new, so I want to say hi.
Hi.
Yeah, well, we don't see a
Just
picture.
I'm enjoying listening.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Good to see you. Or not, I can't see you, but I'm glad you're here. We're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Sandy, what are you, the goodwill ambassador?
Yeah, really.
It's like somebody come into a group and, people, and maybe not everybody knows each other, and I sort of know most people, so I saw that name, and I don't know, I thought it was the Cohens, and it is.
It is. Thank you for joining us, Elise.
Yeah, really.
Okay, that's gonna wrap up Jonah. For tonight. We are gonna jump into our next thing really now, which is Pirkei Avot. And so those who want to study a little Pirkei Avot with us, the ethics of our fathers, some great rabbinic teachings. That's what's coming up in the next 30 seconds. So everyone's welcome to stay or welcome to head out if they have other things to do. But really enjoyed studying Jonah with you, and we'll be on again next week. Yeah, next week. I'm trying to think which prophet to do. Well, technically, we're up to Obadiah, but he only has one chapter, and he's not very exciting. And so we might move to Micah, who's a little bit more exciting. Micah has a lot more good stuff in it. So probably Micah next week is the spoiler, unless I can think of anything going on in the Jewish world that's interesting. We're still a couple weeks away from Shavuot. We have some of that to do as well. That's Thursday the 28th. Make sure to mark your calendars for that. Michael Torup, Rabbi Torup and I are doing a Torah study that evening on Thursday the 28th. It's going to be joint Beth El and TBI experience. And then Yisker on the 29th, on the Friday morning. Okay, cool. So.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I see Karen's here. Hi, Karen.
Hi, is this the romper room back here, this cartoon picture of your house?
Yeah, this is the Simpsons living room.
I thought I should recognize it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, since it was Star Wars Day, we went with.
Of course, be with you. Okay.
Yeah, may the force be with you. So.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yes, I could be there too. Anywhere you want to be.
It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, it really doesn't. But there's something about when you do about 400 of these.
Oh my God!
How do you do
How do you do that, Rabbi?
I just asked, how do you do that?
How do you do that?
There's a setting on Zoom that if you go to your settings and it'll say virtual. So like here, let me show you. Do us even a little Zoom tutorial while we're here. Let's see if that connects. Okay, never mind.
All right.
But yeah, you can actually on the Zoom, you can actually change your background, your settings. One of the fun things about Zoom now is that they have 800 tutorials because everyone's using it now. And so on their website, it gives you all these different things to do. So really, any photo you have in your your photos, you can make as your background. And so even if you go to your name, you can usually do a right click, and then it might give you that option. Or on the bottom where it has the 3 dots, it might be hiding there as well, depending on your computer and depending on whether you're using a Mac or using an Apple or using a phone. All a little different, but it took me a little while to figure out. Now I enjoy it again.
I'll play with it later.
Yeah, it makes something a little again, and it also hides the beautiful luxurious background of my house. I'm actually in Elizabeth's office. Yeah, that's what I use for this because it's like the only quieter space such that it is. So I use this space for the studies. And I use my dining room area for Friday nights. That way I can have the kiddish setup and everything like that.
Right.
God willing. I mean, like we're trying to see when we can get back into the synagogue in a safe way. And we'll keep you updated.
I was hoping by the end of the month, the end of May.
Yeah, that's a nice hope.
Yeah, okay.
No, I'm with you. That was my hope as well. I hope to be back in the synagogue starting June 1. I don't know whether that's going to be feasible, but that is my hope as well. It's just with this thing, they're saying that
Oh, there's just so much going on.
small group, like I think like something like this, we could probably finagle like a Torah study thing and like Derek Torah. I think we could probably do that. I think that might work. The actual Shabbat services, I think, are the trickier ones at this point because
We have enough space if we just don't sit next to each other, you know?
you got to be 6 feet away. But now they're saying that one of the worst things you can do now, is worse than coughing, is actually singing, because singing stuff is spraying out more with more velocity. And so I can almost see us like all wearing masks, being 15 feet from each other in high holiday settings. And it's just, I'm not sure if that feels that much better.
That'll be difficult in the choir.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like so, but
It's not going to happen, Leah.
You have one to say cold rain on it or something.
Yeah, we're just, I mean, day to day monitoring the situation, and Nina, who just started, her presidency. God bless her. It's not starting off with the easy one. She's.
Polly didn't either.
No.
Polly's was just as bad. I mean, she knows.
Yeah, I mean, it has not been an easy go.
Yeah.
By many stretch. So again,
it's not been an easy 2 years.
No, but I had a meeting a couple days with the board of rabbis in Pinellas and in Tampa, and everyone's sort of feeling the same thing. Like, we want to get back to it, but no one's feeling really safe and secure about it right now. And that's really the biggest issue, is that when we do open up, we want it to be safe and secure and with really minimal risk. And depending on who you ask, that could be a long time.
Yeah.
But again, God willing, sooner than later, because
I'm gonna make a quick call to Gary. I had a little problem getting on tonight too, so maybe he is having the problem too.
Okay, yeah.
From the website, couldn't get it from the website.
Yeah, that's the way I went.
Yeah, I couldn't get on from the website.
Yeah, and so if we have the website and we have the email, plus this is a recurring meeting, so I don't think the settings change very much, which is good. But again, I'm very happy with how we've all adapted to Zoom. It's just, again, after a while,
I like it.
There's like quarantine
I kind of like it too.
fatigue.
I was wondering, Rabbi, you mailed some people not too long ago that maybe this COVID virus is, if you're from a religious point of view, is a, like Noah's flood or the plague or crossing the Red Sea, the Egyptians got killed. And so maybe a superior force said that we've a greedy world.
Okay, I'll see you in a bit.
Did I get someone's last part, John?
I said, I thought about a few weeks ago that maybe this COVID is if you're from a religious point of view, like Noah's flood or Sodom and Gomorrah or the Red Sea and the Egyptian army was killed, that, we had it so good and now we don't have it so good.
It's a little rough, but I don't believe in a God who sends plagues, at this point, for us. So I think this is one of those things where, unfortunately, it goes back to Maimonides. Like, this is the price you pay for being human. Our bodies are made of matter decays, and we have illness in the world. And this whole thing is I think, teaching us, if anything, and I don't look for silver linings on this stuff too often. I just don't think that's, I don't need a lot of meaning to be made out of this, but I can just say that I'd like to think when we're all done with this, I think hopefully it increases our sense of empathy and compassion for those of us who, for whatever the reason, feel isolated and cut off from their communities on a more regular basis. I'd like to think that that's maybe a result or a consequence of all this, that will be more thoughtful when it comes to inclusion and thinking hard about who feels excluded and why, and what we can do to help, whether it's because of age or physical ability or not being neurotypical or people who are just minorities, sexual orientation, gender identity, that we just got to think about who are the people who always feel this way. And we're getting a taste of it now, and it stinks. I don't think anyone's enjoying this situation. It's just, the joke earlier was, hey, you get to stay home for a couple of months. What can be so bad? It's rough. It's more rough for some than others, but I don't think anyone's like going, oh, this is awesome. I get to watch, Netflix and order pizza.
Oh my God.
It's
Not my style either.
like this thing is brutal. And again, God knows things could be worse. But I don't like to deny anyone their discomfort at this moment. I think we're all feeling it in different ways. And again, that's why, God willing, this will be done sooner than later. I'm just not feeling, unfortunately, a lot of hope that it's going to be done as quick as I would like it to be.
I think that also, like Jonah, everybody is instilled with a huge amount of fear.
Yeah.
And a huge amount of ignorance, which is fearful.
Yeah, well, it feeds into it, obviously. And I think that people are afraid, anxious, concerned. The best metaphor that I've seen recently was the idea of a plane, flying into heavy and dense fog, and that you can't really see your way out of it. You don't know you don't know when the fog is going to end. You have to trust your control panels, so you know what you're doing. But you don't know when it's going to end, and you can't really see. And right now, I think that's the worst part of this, is that if we told everybody, if Dr. Fauci comes on the TV and says, by July 15th, this will all be done. No more social distancing. Everything will be fine. Corona's going to go away. We'd be like, it stinks. We got to be in the house for, another 2+ months. But we'd have a target date. If we would know it was going to end. And so it would stink, but at least we would know it was going to end. Now it's like, maybe in June, maybe in July, maybe in 2021.
September.
Maybe this is going to be a year. Maybe it's going to be 18 months of sort of on and off of the situation. That's what I think is the fearful part, is that if we just sort of knew, it's almost like, God forbid, you have a medical issue, right? And you don't know what it is. That's really scary. And when you find out what it is, even if it's a bad diagnosis, there is some comfort in knowing what it is, so you can begin, God willing, to treat it, to fight it.
And not being in control and things like that.
Say again, Sandy?
I said, I was just saying, kind of agreeing with what you're saying. It's part of the unknown, so much anxiety.
Yeah.
In terms of, and we have there are a lot of people, they feel out of control because we don't have a lot. We have to kind of hand over some of, we can control how we handle it at home or whatever, but the bigger picture, we have to put it in our faith into somebody else to kind of guide us from the medical perspective or spiritual, however anybody wants to say it. But it's that unknown and a sense of loss of many things as well, in terms of loss of connection and loss of activities and just loss of everyday routine. So
loss. I mean, there's that sense of grief, right, that we're dealing with here. That sense of loss, and we're all trying to handle it in our different ways. Which is why I have 6 pints of ice cream coming in from Graders, which is technically for Mother's Day. But you know what? Dad's going to enjoy some too.
Rabbi,
we'll be there 6 feet apart.
I think that my son said, Eric said that, he has a staff of about 30 people, and they have a quarantini meeting at 5 o'clock online to take a drink, and he feels badly for these people. And I said, I feel badly for everybody under 25 who hasn't yet really lived their lives. And this is something they're worrying them, are they going to have a chance to fulfill their life like their parents or grandparents?
It's very scary. I feel bad, we're seeing the pictures this past week right, of the kids who couldn't graduate, officially, like they had the ceremony, or it had that moment. The high schoolers, that haven't been able to have their ceremony. In my world, in terms of the rabbinic cantorial world, it was devastating, that you can't have in-person ordination. That is just something that you work for so long for that moment, and they're actually doing an online ordination, on Sunday, because you got to give these people their titles. They're going off into the world. And so it's gonna, and they're gonna have a more in-person thing when it's time, when they can do it safely. But literally, there's no physical distancing for an ordination. That they're literally they're putting their hands on you. And they're investing you. They're ordaining you. That's the laying of hands, is smicha. So you can't socially distance that. But when they can do it safely, they'll do it. But it's really sad, and it's really hard. Again, and I spoke to someone today. Frankly, again, it all sort of pales in comparison to this other issue, which is when somebody passes away during COVID. I spoke to somebody today. We had someone pass away in our community, today, yesterday, and they were talking to me, and they couldn't see, their spouse for the past month. And they were able to get a couple hours, today or yesterday before it happened. But pulled a few strings and they got it done. But these COVID funerals are terrible. Just
Not satisfactory.
no,
It's closure.
In any sense, not satisfactory, at all. I spoke to David Gross today, actually, when I was talking about it. They're closing down their Clearwater location. So they're all going to be in St. Pete. So
Totally closing.
Yeah, they're closing down the Clearwater location. It's just not financially going to work for them anymore. I don't know if it would have worked without COVID, but certainly with COVID, they are shutting it down. They've sold it off already. They're doing something else. And they're fine. They're in St. Pete. They're gonna still do all that they do, just from the St. Pete office.
But the funeral homes have been overwhelmed everywhere.
Yeah.
They still have to do what they do, and now with over 60,000 deaths, they weren't ready for that kind of work.
Yeah, no, but I hear that. I think it's also just that the way we do death in America is changing, and so that's another story for another day. But because he and I spoke about that months ago, I'm saying that pre-COVID, the way we do death in America has changed, and people are less interested in having a big, ceremony at a funeral home and like a big bells and whistles,
Except in Muncie.
People are doing more cremations, graveside funerals, sort of smaller things. So there's no need for these big spaces anymore, in the same way that there was before. So that's another lesson for another day, I guess. But that shows though that so much is getting affected.
Yeah. The way we do education. So you look at the kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, education is going to be the big change too.
The battle in my house someday.
Yeah.
School opening up again in September and how to handle that.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
There's a big concern about September.
Sure.
Yeah. We have September.
But Karen, what do you mean that things are going to change?
Well, because kids in dormitories at universities, from kindergarten on forward, we're in communal classrooms. Well, I think that's going to change for a good long while now, which means education is probably going to be much more digital than it ever was before.
Okay.
And I don't know how kids are going to learn socialization skills either. Truthfully.
That's true.
That worries me, certainly about the youth. It really does. Oh, there he goes. He's on now. Gary just came on. So yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that so much is going to change, and I think the idea of returning to normal, we have to temper expectations of what normal is, especially for a while. And it might be a different normal than we're used to. And education is going to be part of it. I think there are a lot of elements of society that are going to be changed for a while. And if it ever gets back to normal, so to speak, I think it can easily be different the entire way through.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we have a lot less handshakers.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll have a lot less travelers too. So there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, I think back to the 1984 Aldous Huxley that they predicted a time when everybody would be in their home watching Big Brother on TV, and they have no option to do anything. And they are told what to do, and they do everything sort of online. And, this was predicted,
30 years ago, 40 years ago.
Or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think that, again, just looking for some of the lessons of this, if anything, I think it shows that, like, those of us who maybe thought that we would slide into that kind of world regardless, and that it would almost be like a positive thing. I think now we're seeing that we don't really want that as a society. Like we don't want that to be our world of just sitting in our homes and ordering everything off Amazon and no touch delivery at our doors, and just working from home and being in our own little cave. I think if this has shown us anything, is that that's not what we want as a society right now. I don't think anyone, again, is really clamoring for this to go on 1 minute longer than it has to. That, obviously it's different if it's your choice or not than when you have to do it. Here we have to do it. But again, I don't think this experience, I think it's showing us that we really do need other people, and we really want to be around other people, even those of us who are maybe more introverted or less interested in like sort of big gatherings. We still want to be with our friends. We want to be with our family. We don't want to feel restricted. We want to be able to get in our cars. We want to take trips. We want to just even if it's just down to the beach, we want to do that. And then of course I drive around, without getting out of my car, and I see people, the past couple of weeks just all over each other and not social distancing, and I go, okay, I hope this isn't a problem, but.
Well, the police were out on the beach today. A lot of police today on the beach.
I think also that what I said about the prediction that at this point, the president and governors are essentially telling everybody how to live.
We're trying, I think it's conflicting. It's conflicting reports, and you depending on who you listen to, who your prophet is, so to speak. And that's going to be a challenge, again, when you have conflicting messages, because we're talking about that at the synagogue. Like, well, who do we listen to? Like who's our source? There's 28 different sources, giving different information. Who does the temple listen to? Who does lay leadership listen to? Is it the governor of Florida? Is it the president? Is it Fauci? Is it the CDC? Is it the Florida Board of Health? Is it the Pinellas County Board of Health? Is it X? Is it Y? Which study? There's a lot of information, and some of it might be right and some of it might be wrong. And so that makes it tricky as well. I feel like we could talk COVID for the rest of the time, but I feel like I want to end on some Torah instead, end on some rabbinic literature. And this is actually, I think, relates in a way. So I'm going to bring up Pirkei Avot. I feel like the first part of it makes me sort of smile during our conversation. Pirkei Avot. Karen, you want to give that a read in the beginning here? Ben Zoma?
Sure. Ben Zoma says, "Who is the wise one? One who learns from all people, as it says. I've acquired understanding from all my," oh, that's my older brother, "all my teachers." Who is the mighty one? One who conquers their impulse, as it says, "Slowness to anger is better than a mighty person, and the ruler of their spirit than the conqueror of a city." Who is the rich one? One who is happy with their lot, as it says, "When you eat from the work of your hands, you will be happy, and it will be well with you." You will be happy in this world, and it will be better with you in the world to come. Who is honored? One who honors the created beings, as it says, for those who honor me, I will honor, and those who despise me will be held in little esteem.
Thank you. And so that is actually a pretty typical midrashic way of explaining something, where you have a quote, from a rabbi who then backs it up with a biblical quote. You take it out of context, just plugged into the text. And so here you see quotes from Psalms and Proverbs and Samuel to back up the ideas of Ben Zoma, who famously went insane during his lifetimes. This was actually before he lost his marbles. According to tradition, he and 3 other rabbis get a glimpse of heaven, and Ben Zoma can't handle it, and his mind sort of short circuits.
Why does it remind me of the 4 questions for Passover?
Good things come in 4s, I guess, right? So these are
These are 4s, yeah.
Yeah. Better than 3s, right? So 4s. I was thinking about the first one. It's in a conversation, who is the wise one who learns from all people. I feel like we're learning from a lot of people right now, and it feels actually like too much. I talk to my father, pretty regularly now, just to check in on him and see how he's handling the whole situation, because this thing has him really, really confounded, and just really, he's not at his best right now. So I'm trying to help him work through some of it. But one thing he has done, which is positive, is he's not watching the news 9 hours a day anymore. So I think that's helpful. He was literally just sitting in his room, sitting in the living room, just watching, different news channels and hearing all the different reports, and it was just making him more crazy. And so it's just now he's down to a solid 90 minutes, which still might be a little too much. Yeah. But he's doing it now. But he wants to know, right? I mean, I think we as for the Jewish community, I think it has been instilled in us for a long time in our tradition that knowledge is power, and that we're supposed to learn, to be curious intellectually. We're supposed to really think about things and, again, seek wisdom, seek knowledge. And so right now, I just feel like, some of us are trying to seek knowledge from 20 different sources and trying to figure it out. Here, Ben Zoma, it's the positive, the idea that we can learn from everybody and take a little bit from everyone. It's, to me, a statement of humility. We'll get to that, I think, in a moment with the commentary, that it's important to try to learn from all people, even if they aren't necessarily scholars. I had the pleasure today, I took a little time, to study today with some of my teachers. There were a couple webinars today. I got a chance to tune in, and I heard my former Rosh Yeshiva, David Ellenson. He did a fantastic teaching on how we remember people. And then I learned from another teacher of mine later in the day about Jewish women and the history of pandemic. And so it was about 3 women who were very, I want to say established, actually, really established nursing as a profession in the Jewish world, and in the greater sort of, in the greater world they were living in. So people know a couple names, but this is a sort of a very famous person, not to me, but to others, who had helped create basically nursing as we know it today. And it was fascinating, that it was some Jewish women that were involved in this, and not intentionally, so to speak, not something that they wanted to do growing up, but it was something they felt called to do. And it was their social action, and there was Tikkun Olam. And just getting a chance to study with my teachers made me feel good. And I was like, getting a chance to sort of sit down and be a student and learn. But the reality is that I feel like any time I'm in any interaction with Chevruta, with study, with Torah study, with Derech Torah, I'm always learning something as well. And I hope that we all sort of have that perspective that we can learn from anybody, that none of us knows everything. And we never know when knowledge is going to creep up and get us. There are times when I'm teaching kids and they say something and they go, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's excellent. And that I'm able to incorporate that into my thinking, because we all come from different perspectives and of different experiences. So I really like that idea. And as you said, it is sort of the 4 questions. who is wise, who is mighty, one who conquers their impulse. Did I give my Samson spiel recently?
No.
Okay. So in the Bible, we don't have, and I think for good reason, but Judaism never really developed the idea of muscle being important as a characteristic. We don't come from the Bible with any sense of like Abraham being a bodybuilder, like, we have a sense that maybe they have some physicality to them. But for the most part, our Jewish ancestors, the patriarchs and matriarchs, are defined by other characteristics than physical strength. Piety, reverence, cleverness, kindness, compassion, empathy. Those are the values that our biblical figures possess, the ones that we admire. The one exception to that rule is in Judges, and that is Samson. Samson is the Hulk. Samson is the Jewish Hercules. And he's a big, strong guy who fights the Philistines, kicks butt all the time. He has these feats of strength and endurance, and it doesn't work out well for him. His story ends rather badly because he's married to Delilah, who's a Philistine, might not have been the best pick of wife to begin with. If you're killing, her countrymen off, might not be the best thing. But anyway, they're married, and she wants to unlock the secret of his power, and he keeps lying to her and telling her different things until finally, like, he tells her the truth that if you cut his hair, he loses all of his power. But of course, at night, he's sleeping. She cuts all his hair off, and he loses all his power. And the Philistines take him, and they bind him, and they blind him, and then they're going to execute him. And he prays to God for one more bit of strength, and he winds up pushing down the pillars, of the structure that they're in. Everything falls down. He dies in this blaze of glory with the Philistines. Everyone sort of dies together. That's his story. What does that sound like to you?
So we all have an Achilles heel.
Bingo, but that's the key, right? Achilles. This sounds Greek. It doesn't sound like a Jewish story. It sounds like a Greek story. It sounds like Achilles. It sounds like other sort of Greek figures that through an act of hubris wind up angering the gods, whatever, and they wind up doomed in their way. It's a tragic story. And so Samson is like the Jewish Hercules, or better said, the Jewish Achilles, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. And I think the story is meant to say, this is not what we do. Like, we're not meant to be we don't value being the physically strongest. You got to have some seichel. You got to have a little bit of wisdom. You can't be a schmo like Samson telling his wife how he's going to get, how you can kill him. It's like that's not the best idea. And so I think the Bible makes that statement through that story that's not about physical strength. So what is it about? Who is mighty? It's the one who's able to conquer their impulse. Impulse here being yetzer, right? That's the Hebrew here. And yetzer hara, the so-called evil impulse, the Freudian id, that we're supposed to be able to control that animalistic piece of ourselves. That's the person who is mighty. Because slowness to anger, and the ruler of the spirit, those are better than the mighty person and the conqueror of the city. If you have, a sense of fortitude, of self-control, that is better, than being, the muscle man. That's why I know Jews are in the NFL, or at least not many. Okay. Who is the rich one? One who is happy with their lot. Pretty straightforward. I mean, there's not much there, and it's pretty straightforward. The idea that we need to be content with what they have. The only twist that they give you here is that it gives you this quote from Psalms, you will be happy and it will be well with you. So they break it down here and saying, if you're content with your lot, you'll be happy in this world, right, where we live now, and it will be well with you where? heaven,
World
right?
to
The
come.
world to come, right? And so that's the only extra bit of theology that they throw in here, that you're going to be happy both here and in the next world. And of course, who is honored? One who honors the created beings, one who honors humanity, right? And those who honor God, I will honor, and those who despise God will be held in little esteem. The idea being is that you can't, again, love God unless you love the creations as well, since we're all created in the image.
So Rabbi, is there a next world? I mean, it doesn't seem like Judaism really talks about that very much.
Oh, it talks about it a lot. It's just more that it doesn't focus on it is the issue. You know, meaning that, like, if you read rabbinic literature, there's a lot of talk about, heaven, talk about, the afterlife. It's just more that because we don't have an answer to it, we don't actually know. Modern Judaism doesn't really emphasize it as something to really teach, because none of us know for certain. It's more of, it would be nice if, right? If you ask somebody, is there an afterlife? Yes, no, maybe. And if it's yes, what my idea of heaven might be different than your vision of heaven. Well, what do we mean when we even say heaven? Like my father and I discuss this all the time. Is the idea of, is there a conscious heaven? Because Judaism affirms the eternality, right, of the soul. The soul continues on, and when the body, no longer does. Well, great, but what does that mean? There are some Jews, albeit a small section, that believe that even means reincarnation, right? That the soul just goes into the body of somebody else, and you sort of start over again. The soul is never destroyed. The soul could connect with God, but I don't know what that means. It connects with God. There's if you look at Eastern religions, right? If you look at Hinduism, for example, the soul gets, much like we say in El Malay, it gets sort of bound up in the bond of everlasting life. So it gets connected to Brahma, it gets connected to God. And that's it, that you've escaped the cycle of reincarnation, and your soul is now connected with the higher powers, the higher being.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Don't you think that it sounds like there's some connection, like in a Jewish religion, where usually people name their children after somebody who has died, like a grandmother, that person is in the soul of the new child a little bit? Why would they name, is there a reason why people name their children after somebody that is close to them that is deceased? That's my question.
Actually, Jews don't do that. Ashkenazic Jews do that.
Yeah.
Sephardic Jews
don't do that.
Yeah.
What?
Sephardic Jews
don't do that.
Okay, but I'm saying, okay, in our case, our kids were named after somebody in our family.
Yeah. So yeah, me too.
Jewish.
I'm saying this is different traditions. So in the Ashkenazic tradition, you name after somebody who died. In Sephardic tradition, you name after someone who's still alive. And they both, it's different ideas but similar reasons, if that makes any sense. The idea is that you name after somebody who dies in the Ashkenazic tradition to honor them, to keep their name alive more than anything else.
Yes.
And it's an unspoken prayer that the child will develop maybe certain values or ideals that he's had. And in Sephardic tradition, it's the same thing. It's just after someone who's alive. In Sephardic tradition, it's seen as really bad luck and bad form to name after somebody who died, because they say you're wishing death upon the child, or maybe some kind of other sort of like spiritual possession. And so they don't like that at all. And Ashkenazic feel the same way in the reverse, that you don't name after somebody who's alive, because then that's actually wishing bad luck on them and that they're going to die. So that's what I'm saying. So it's the same ideas, but just thought about differently. But there was a concern that the Ashkenazic and Sephardic communities had about the naming, because they didn't want the soul of the deceased to be trapped into the body of somebody new. They wanted the soul to go to heaven, to be, again, connected to God. They didn't want the soul to remain. It's only the mystics, and even that, a small subsection of mystics, who believed in Gilgul, who believed in the idea of reincarnation, that you can have the soul of a great Rebbe, can be born again, so to speak, in a child. One of my favorite stories is about a rabbi who comes back to life in a kugel. Yeah, it's a story
I'm
about
in trouble. I don't even like people.
it's one of my favorite stories. It's not Bima Ready is the problem, but it's a really funny story. There's a whole sub series, a whole collection of Jewish mythology and folklore. If you're ever interested on Amazon, if you Google the author Howard Schwartz, Howard Schwartz has been a great compiler of all of these stories, and they're just really bizarre, like Halloween stories, or just these bizarre stories about witches and about demons and about Lilith, and about this and that. And they're just really bizarre, sort of out there stories. Some of them taken from the Kabbalah, but some of it is just more the stories we tell, the stories we used to tell, maybe each other, that we don't do that as much anymore with these particular stories, because I didn't know these stories. I'm looking at them going, this is far beyond my experience. There we go. Got that bug. Okay. So yeah. But yeah, it's really I think fascinating material. As I said, there's not a lot of use for it pulpit wise, but it's just one of those things that is just fun because it's hard to get up there on Friday night. Here's a story about a demon. It's not really what people want to hear, but it's a little esoteric. But they're interesting. I think they're sort of fun stories. So that goes back to the naming idea. There was a real concern about the soul of the departed, which is why we have things like Kaddish, El Malay Rachamim, that traditionally these prayers are supposed to help, right, uplift a person's soul, literally. That we're talking about, elevating their soul to a higher place, meaning that if they're in the netherworld, so to speak, that we're going to help them get out of there faster by praying for them. And if they're more in the limbo area, so the same thing. We're trying to push themselves to a higher level, that we're helping to illuminate their spirit. So that goes back to the an afterlife. If we believe in this world and that being it, you don't have to worry about it. But if we believe that there's this world and the next world, then some of this does come into play differently.
Rabbi, I just want to share this. I just finished reading this book, and it goes along with the naming and remembering people. The book is Ordinary Grace, and in it there's a Native American, and what he said was that the dead are never far from us. They're in our hearts and in our minds, and in the end, all that separates us from them is a single breath, one final puff of air.
Oh, I like that. That's really cool. I like that. That's a nice way of thinking about it. And that's honestly like more where I come in, is that idea that I think that our eternality, so to speak, is our deeds. It's the things that we do, the people that we influence. That's our legacy. It's how we live on. More than I'm worried about necessarily an afterlife. I think about just not only literal, like children and grandchildren and whatever it might be, but I just think it's the people around us who we touch, who we influence, the stories, that we create with others. I think that's really, for me, what I think about when it comes to legacy and afterlife, so to speak. That when we're gone, we live on in the hearts and minds of people that we touched, in some way. And I think to me, like that's sort of where I come in. Yeah, it'd be great to think about that after this life ends, there's a conscious heaven, and you see your friends and relatives and whatever it might be. I think it's great. I should only wish to be so lucky that be the actual end result. Go to the equivalent of Burns Steakhouse in heaven, and sit down with a nice 48-ounce whatever, and I can get all the what do they serve at Burns? The onion strings, and the cream spinach. I can eat that there because it's not treif there in heaven. It's treif here on earth with the meat. And I can eat it there and it'll be wonderful. Get a nice gin and tonic. I'll be very happy. But you know, if it happens, awesome, great. You know,
I'm waiting for somebody to come back and tell me it's good.
that's what I'm saying. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I only had I had one professor who's actually still alive, thank God. But one professor of mine who always said that when he goes, he's gonna come and find me out of the afterlife. He's gonna come find me, and if I haven't been studying enough, like I said, I would keep studying. So if I stop studying, when he dies, he's gonna come and he's gonna haunt me. He said, and he's gonna come find me at night and he's gonna haunt me. And he's going to curse at me in Yiddish. And then since I haven't studied, I won't know what the Yiddish means. Then I'll have to go look it up. And in having doing so, I will have studied.
Oh, yeah, there's circular logic there.
Yeah.
Very rabbi-ish.
A bit crazy. And so he was a couple eggs short of a dozen a couple times. So
I think that the memory, as you brought up, you named somebody who passed away as part of your name, and that memory in the Kaddish is, you know, they live on in your memory.
Get out of this.
And the other thing is that just for your, you know, Rabbi, before you came here many years ago, many of us here knew the Bobo family, who were Syrian and Sephardic. So all the men were either Sam, Eli, Ezra. And when you looked at the Bobo family in Tampa and Ezra who lived near the temple, they all looked the same. It was like a clone. So
Yeah.
we had a very good view of what the Sephardic community is like.
they also have pretty good food too. Sephardic cuisine, that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's at. None of this gefilte fish nonsense.
Yeah.
They don't mess around in Sephardic with that stuff.
Actually, one of the Bobos who had a shoe store, the brother-in-law, and he told me one time the difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardic matzah, that Sephardic could use an egg. And Ashkenazi said no because the egg might rise.
Huh.
It's always another reason to fight about something. That's what I've learned in thousands of years of Jewish history. Oh, to be fair, it's not only us. You know, the Christian community, the Muslim community, every community has it. That's why you have denominations. We find this whatever it is to fight about, we can find a reason to fight about it. Let's look at Ben Azai over here. Gary, you want to give that a read? You still around?
Okay. Ben Azai says, run to do an easy commandment as to a difficult one, and flee from sin. Since a commandment, I can't see the last part, it's cut off.
Yeah.
Since a commandment leads to another commandment, and sin leads to another sin, since the reward for a commandment is another commandment, and the reward for sin is another sin.
One of those little brain teasers that we get here from the rabbis. They like this, you know, Karen's sort of circular reasoning. Some of this is definitely a little circular. So the first part, run to do an easy commandment as a difficult one, and flee from sin. So this first piece I like, that, you know, to me it's just more that we should make sure never to overlook, you know, the ability to do a big thing or a small thing for somebody. Like there's, what I would equate it to is that I think there are moments when we think about that we do something really big for people, that these huge acts, these huge grand gestures of tzedakah or kindness, whatever, and that's really good. We should do those. But sometimes it's the little things that matter too, and the little kindnesses, the little bits of help that can really make somebody's day. And so there's some commandments that are sort of easy to do that we should do and be really excited about doing them. And the hard ones also, we should want to do them both, you know, both the easy ones and the hard ones. This is an idea. Commandment leads to another commandment, sin leads to another sin, that I think is actually the heart of this text. You know, it's the piece that I think is the most important. Barton Nura comments on it a little bit here, that this is the way of the world, that one does a commandment finds it easier to do others. One who does sins finds it difficult to separate from them. It's basically the cigarette theory here, is that once you start smoking, it's hard to quit smoking, and it's not good for you. And they view that in the same way with sin, the idea that if you start sort of doing the wrong thing, it's harder to break out of that habit of doing a bad thing. You think about sort of people who escalate in negative behaviors, and that it's just they want to stop, but they sort of become, for lack of a better term, addicted to doing the wrong thing. And so it's harder for them to break out of it. The biblical example, of course, is Pharaoh, right? And that Pharaoh, after the first few plagues, it says that he hardens his heart. He doesn't let the Israelites go. After plague after plague after plague, Pharaoh hardens his heart and doesn't free the Israelites. But then by the end, God hardens Pharaoh's heart. It says Pharaoh's heart was hardened. So they say, well, was God robbing Pharaoh of his free will? They say, no, the interpretation is that Pharaoh was given the opportunity to change, but after not doing it over and over again, he himself, he couldn't change it. He could no longer repent or redeem himself. He had become too accustomed to doing the wrong thing. The flip of it is, doing the good things, that if we perform positive actions and mitzvot, then we're going to keep doing them because it feels good and it's helping people. And so that's what we see here with our friend Bartanura here. And that God actually, I love the idea, I've spoken about it before, that according to tradition, when we do mitzvot, God actually helps us do other mitzvot. That God is sort of at our side, pushing us to do more, helping us, encouraging us to do more mitzvot. So that's the reward for the commandment is another commandment, and that God's going to help us perform those mitzvot. What God doesn't do is God never helps us do the wrong thing. So if we do the wrong thing, God doesn't help us do wrong, but God doesn't prevent us either, because that would rob us of our free will. And so God doesn't help, so to speak, to do wrong, but God also doesn't prevent it from happening. That's up to us. Let's see here. I like this quote here. There's also a Ben Azai one. Leah, you want to give us a read over here?
Sure. He would say, "Do not disparage anyone and do not shun anything. For there is no person who does not have their hour, and there is no thing which does not have its place."
Indeed. I like that idea. And Maimonides sort of fleshes out a little bit. Linda, you there?
Yep.
Can you give us a read over here? And he said?
And he said, "It is impossible that there not be for every man a time in which he can damage or benefit, and even with a small thing."
Yeah, that's it. Even with a small thing. The wording is rough because of the translation. But yeah, it's that according to Maimonides, right, everything, every person has a time and a place, right? That there is nobody who is quote unquote, useless, right? Everyone has their moment in the sun, which is an idea that I like. The Bible has this a couple times, most prominently in the Jacob story, the Joseph story. It's the Jacob and Joseph story, I guess to be fair, where Jacob sends Joseph out to find his brothers, and he can't find them, and he just runs across an ish. He runs across a man who's just there, and he goes, "Hey, you see my brothers?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, they went that way." And that's his only line. This guy in the Bible, he has that one line, "Yeah, they went left," kind of. He tells them where they're going. And it's easily overlooked. But then the rabbis say, if it wasn't for that man, we wouldn't have ever been redeemed from Egypt. We never would have gotten Torah. Because it was only after Joseph finds his brothers that Joseph gets thrown into the pit. And Joseph gets thrown into the pit and gets sold to the Egyptians. And then he winds up going to Egypt and becoming, Pharaoh's right-hand person. And that's how we got to Egypt. was just through that one moment of the Ish, the man saying they were over there. If Joseph never finds them, maybe Joseph goes home. Maybe Joseph just hangs out with his father, and who knows how the story unfolds. But in that one moment, that person had a time and a place, so to speak, to affect our story. And so every person has, again, their 15 minutes of fame, if you want to put it that way. And it's also a choice, right? That they can either damage or benefit, even with a small thing. That each one of us has an opportunity to impact or influence the world for the positive or for the negative, which I think is an important message of empowerment, and personal fulfillment. That again, each one of us has our role to play. We don't necessarily know what that role is, and our roles can change depending on the person we're relating to, right? And so that can be different. Heroes and villains, supporting players, whatever it might be. Let's see. I don't want to end on something depressing. It's already 9:05, and I don't want to worry about the end being a worm. It's a little depressing to end on. Let's see if we find something more positive. Okay, here we go. I think this is a little more positive. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, fun name to say as well. Let the honor of your student be as dear to you as your own. Like the reverence of your teacher, and the reverence for your teacher be like the reverence of heaven. I like that idea, that we just, the idea of kavod, right, and the respect and honor, that we all should be, again, honoring each other. And that, as a rabbi, as a teacher, you have to honor your students. It has to be as important to you as your own honor is, and the honor of your compatriot, right, being as important to you as the honor of your mentors, of your teacher, and your reverence for your teacher being with the reverence of heaven. I love the idea that we are responsible in a way for treating each other well and showing each other respect. I feel like when we understand that each of us has our own integrity, our own human dignity, that we need to, again, be respectful of each other in our discussions, in our dialogue. How important that lesson is today, right? I feel like if anything, there's a lot less kavod in the world. There's a lot less honor in the world right now for people of differing opinions, people who don't think or act the same way. There's a lot of, I feel like, dismissiveness in our world, a lot of talking through people, basically just maligning and disparaging other people, as opposed to saying, look, I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to agree with your perspective, but I can also find ways to respect you as an individual, even if I disagree, even if I think that you are wrong to the deepest part of my soul. I might think someone is wrong, but that person still deserves, the respect, that we all, deserve. So I think that's a nice message to say goodbye on, the idea of honor and respect. Anyone else have any other parting thoughts?
I just have a very quick question. What's the difference between the Chabad version of the Pirkei Avot and the one that you're using? Is there any difference, or is it the same, basically?
I haven't seen the Chabad version of it, so I would just say I haven't seen the Chabad version of it, so I can't speak to it.
Oh.
But I would say that usually the difference is from these different texts is perspectives on it. The translations are going to be different because they always are. But depending on your denomination of Judaism, the interpretations, the commentaries are going to be different, and what they take from it's going to be different. So, like, the example I give is that I remember when I was still actually, I think I was actually in Hebrew school and in college, I was reading a series. Has anyone seen the series, The Midrash Says?
No.
The Midrash Says is a series of books. They're very colorful. And I was reading them, because I wanted to know what the Midrash, and so I talked to one of my rabbis at that point, and I said, oh, I'm reading these books. And he goes, well, he says, Josh, you should know that these books are written from an Orthodox perspective. Like, you aren't reading the Midrash, you're reading an Orthodox interpretation of the Midrash. It's like reading the Jewish book of Why, or like the Kitzur, Shulchan Aruch, all these books like this. They're all written from perspectives. You know, so like you look at these books and you think, well, this is what it is. No, it's one person's interpretation of what it is. It might be a good interpretation. You know, it might be based on good things, but it's an interpretation nonetheless, and it's not meant to be authoritative. So I think that's the difference. You just reminded me that there's a new commentary on Pirkei Avot. Actually, just came out the past year. This Orthodox rabbi Shmuley Yankowitz, and he wrote a social justice commentary on Pirkei Avot, which is supposed to be really good. And I just bought a few new commentaries for myself, just for Bible study and whatnot. So there's always more commentaries coming out. Always room on the shelf. There's no room on the shelf, but I like to pretend, and I just have piles of books now, just stacking up.
All right, thank you for that.
No, my pleasure. It's great to see everybody. Everyone stay well and stay safe.
You too.
God
You too.
willing, we'll be back to it sooner than later in person, but again, we'll zoom it out, and I'll come out with different backgrounds.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Be well,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you. Everybody be well. Now, how do we get out of this? Let's see. Zoom, exit.